There's our joint. I'd like to call to order the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency for April 1st, 2008. May we have roll call for the council, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Sure. Will you read your report?
Agenda for the April 1, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency.
Okay, sorry, we did.
Oh,
Strike
yeah, that's
that.
right.
That's all right. Let me just put a shoehorn in there.
Excellent.
Can we call the roll for the agency, please?
Agency members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Draymond.
Here. Now your
Thank you.
report.
Agenda for the April 1, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, March 27, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, before we begin, before we read the first item into the record, I want to point out the obvious, that we have 4 council members here today. Mr. Weaver, as stated earlier, is assisting his family with the welcoming of their new family member into this world. Several of these items, Mr. Howard, if I'm correct, are motions for appropriation.
Actually,
Or Ms. Van Meiden.
one.
Of them.
One.
Number 5. That's the resolution of appropriation of the Redevelopment Agency, correct?
And without having the gall to count votes, because that would be a violation of the Brown Act, it is entirely possible that the council may end up in a 2-2 split on that particular item that requires a 3-vote affirmative approval. In the event that that item is called and there is a 2-2 split, what is the meaning of that? What would be the results of that?
For the Redevelopment Agency, vote on number 5 would be a no vote pursuant to the bylaws for the Redevelopment Agency.
1E, you're referring to 1E.
The resolution
Did you
of
say 5?
appropriation.
Okay.
It's 1E, I'm sorry. I'm reading from the page of the staff report.
Okay.
I apologize. It's 1E, correction.
That would indicate a no vote, which would not necessarily come back on its own, this is different from a tie vote, a 2-2 tie, in which by rule or by policy, it would come back the very next meeting until the decision is made.
Actually, by charter, by Glendale charter, a council tie vote would be carried from meeting to meeting until either taken off calendar or the tie is broken. That is a council vote. This is an agency item, and it's subject to the agency bylaws, as Ms. Van Meiden pointed out.
Mr. Yusefian and Mr. Starr.
Question further. Would any agency member be able to put this item on the agenda to come back? It's a 2-2 vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any agency member alone, you mean one person alone?
Yes.
As opposed to a majority?
Yeah, there's no prevailing side.
Let me
There's no
clarify.
prevailing side.
Let
I just
me-
want to make that clear.
Yes, the request for a reconsideration after the no vote would have to come from the person who, would have to be made by one of the 2 members who were negative in their vote, that made the
Or it's on
no
the
votes.
prevailing side.
Right, that were not on
In
the
this case, that
prevailing
would be a
side.
negative.
That's correct.
If there is no prevailing side, because it's a 2 no vote and 2 yes vote. So where is the prevailing side?
It would be the individual who requested that it be voted no. No, one of the 2 of the 4
The prevailing side would actually be the negative.
would be the negative.
Because it requires 3
it
favorable
fails.
votes. The 2 votes that voted no would be the prevailing side, because essentially they prevailed on defeating the
It
motion.
was defeated.
Mr. Starver.
So they would be the prevailing side.
Inasmuch as these items, either as they relate to the Flower Street crossing or as they relate to 1E, are all in furtherance of conditions attached to a PUC approval, previously approved and entered into by the City Council, I'd recommend the entire matter be held over until we have a full City Council.
What,
Mr. Quintero.
what does the PUC, what's the difference there, whether PUC is involved or not?
Well, these, you may recall, these items, particularly with respect to Flower Street crossing and item 1E, which is the commitment of $2 million for safety improvements for crossings south of the 134, specifically Dorn and Broadway, were all part of I'll call it a settlement with the CPUC relative to the City Council's application to open the Flower Street crossing. Now, the first 4 items are in furtherance of the Flower Street crossing. The 5th item is one of the conditions of the PUC's approval of the Flower Street crossing, which committed the city to, and in this case it's the redevelopment agency's money, but committed us to putting into escrow $2 million for the city/agency's commitment for safety upgrades at those crossings south of the 134. All of that is a package for which they are all conditions attached to the CPUC's approval of the Flower Street crossing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jillian. Yeah, which CPUC agreement was previously approved by the City Council. Entered into.
And the council motions, the first 4, because they're not appropriation motions, should there be a 2-2 vote, would be a tie, considered a tie to be continued to the very next meeting.
That's correct. If we're an actual tie, yes.
Okay, is there any, it's my intention, before I hear some groans, to hear from the public in any event on this matter. Is there any support from council to continue this till we have a full slate? Mr. Draymond.
Well, put that way, let me, I have no desire to sit here and beat my head against a wall. My views on the issue are fairly well known. If I understand what's being explained to us, at least item A, B, C, and D, we would end up coming back anyway. If the vote were to go 2-2.
Tie vote, yes, sir.
Yeah. So I too want to hear from the public, but I don't see the point in taking that vote. I'm happy to do that if that's the way my colleagues want to go, but I would just as soon.
Would there be a motion then to continue at least the council items to next week? A joint meeting?
You know what, Mr. Mayor, since you're going to hear from the public anyway, I might be interested in hearing what they have to say.
I'm going to hear from the public. I just want a motion and a second, and then hear from...
Well, I haven't meant on that issue, but...
Oh, okay.
But,
we'll hear from that as well, but I think we need to have a motion for them to address the continuance issue. Doesn't have to be a formal motion.
We've got the items on the agenda, it just has to be read into the record.
Okay, let's do our housekeeping. Why don't you read the items under number 1 into the record, Mr. Casar?
1 is Director of Public Works and Director of Development Services regarding railroad highway at-grade crossing installation and safety enhancement projects. 1A is Council Resolution adopting spec number 3326 and relating plans to extend Flower Street between San Fernando Road and Airway to install an at-grade railroad crossing and directing city clerk to advertise for bids. 1B is council motion authorizing increase in the contingency amount for the professional services agreement with DMJM Harris Inc. by $200,000 to cover bidding and construction support design services for the Flower Street Extension project. 1C is council motion authorizing execution of a professional services agreement with Carter and Burgess Inc. in an amount not to exceed $236,113 plus contingency of $30,798 for construction management services for the Flower Street Extension project. And 1D is council motion increasing contingency amount for DMJM Harris Inc. by $222,000 to cover additional storm drainage design services on San Fernando Road for the Grandview Avenue and Sonora Avenue at-grade crossing improvement project. Now 1E is agency resolution appropriating $2 million to provide funds for safety improvements of the at-grade crossing shared by the City of Los Angeles.
Okay, I have 2 cards from Mr. Masihi. One's for oral communications, but I was informed by the city attorney that that item does not exist. I will call you then for agenda item number 1, for which you've submitted a card.
members of the agency and city council. My name is Patrick Massey. I'm a Glendale resident. Thank you for that clarification. I thought there was an oral communication, but that's fine. I was going to talk about a different issue. First and foremost, I want to point out some mistakes with the staff report. The staff report is based on the Public Resources Code Section 21080 to 21098, Section 10, which says a project for the institution or increase of passenger or commuter services on rail or highway right-of-way already in use, including modernization of existing stations and parking facilities. You guys are getting an exemption on this, but if you read it word by word, you do not meet this exemption. So there's one mistake right there. The second mistake is the CPUC, specifically in closed meeting, stated that every improvement project, including, Grandview, including Sonora, including the closure of Doran, had to go through CEQA, and CEQA had to be prepared. Staff do not have a complete CEQA for each improvement project. So that's a no-no. And, I'd like to point out, by just giving you a copy of the Public Resources Code, which I'm sure you have, but in case you don't, I'm going to have our wonderful city clerk pass this out to all the council members and agency members, including the city manager and the city attorney. One thing that I have to point out is that if you look at some recent legal cases, the CEQA requires an initial study of analysis of the complete project, not a piece of the project. And CEQA approvals are routinely overturned by judges because of what we call piecemealing together. And you really need to look at this issue, because what you guys are doing with this report, you're trying to combine things without having the CEQA report to go along with them. And also, I'd like to point out that the EIR for the Flower Street has to be a recent EIR. From what I understand from inside sources, the EIR is a couple of years old. When was the latest EIR done on the Flower Street addition? So the EIR for the Flower Street crossing is a major issue with what you're trying to do today. And the report that you have in front of you is not a complete report. Now, is that deliberate or is that a mistake? I'll let you be the judge. But the bottom line is this is an extension of a road. And it has nothing to do with modernization of parking. It has nothing to do with Metrolink. It has nothing to do with the railroad. It is simply an extension of a road, which unfortunately staff is using to get an exemption for. And it does not satisfy rule number 10, as I stated. So based on that, I hope you guys reject all 5 findings here. And the vote has to be taken tonight. I hope you guys will have the guts to take the vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Hank Sheets.
Clarify, is this item, as far as the council and the agency, going to be discussed and voted on later?
We haven't decided that.
Okay.
Have we, John?
Thank you. Perfectly clear. Good afternoon. My name is Hank Sheets. Here are the GRN council members and agency chair Draymond and agency members, Mr. Starbird and staff. I'm here to make comments about the at-grade crossing. You know how I feel about the project, and all of my neighbors are also strongly opposed to this crossing, which is an understatement. But I would like to take the time to thank Mr. Starbird and John O'Bagdanian for making their services available during the discussions and to the neighborhood as far as the project goes and if it goes ahead. We feel that many problems with the traffic and safety will happen in spite of all the studies that have been done. And specifically, Jono has offered to meet with us at any time to discuss issues and problems so that we can discuss measures to mitigate any problems that do occur. I think this is a good opportunity, and I think we should start those meetings immediately, and I think we should carry those meetings on through the construction process, should it occur, and on beyond that, if the crossing is ever completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nancy Kubota.
First, I was going to say good afternoon, but I think it's good evening. My name is Nancy Kubota. I'm a resident of Glendale, I'm in the Pelincone area. I've been before you at other times. And I'm just asking you, as a resident of a modest neighborhood where people take care of their homes, we care about our lives. We have teachers, policemen, firemen, blue-collar workers, young families who are on their way up to improve their lives. And ever since Disney has come in, this has been a nightmare for our neighborhood. We agreed to have an overpass. Now they're asking for a crossing. There is no reason to have another crossing. You have one several hundred feet down. Why can't that be improved? Why do they need two? I'm really upset. When I saw Burbank Airport and I see the nightmare that they have with the noise and the congestion, what do you think is going to happen with us? The same exact thing. People are going to be asking for noise abatement, for something to happen, for traffic. People are going to be coming to the Americana. They're going to be using that. You're going to have trains coming, arms going up and down. Traffic is going to be backed up. It's going to be a nightmare. You know, I thought this project that Disney had presented to us was going to be an improvement. How can a railroad crossing be an improvement? I really wish you would consider this. We're not the bigwigs in this city. We're the little guys. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards. Mr. Quintero.
I have some questions. The first speaker talked about CEQA, and how recent is the EIR?
Kathleen Truman is our outside CEQA counsel, will address the CEQA questions.
Good afternoon. I will. Kathleen Truman of Truman and Elliott, and I represented the city and before the CPUC on this matter, and have also been assisting with the CEQA review. Actually, the staff report, I'd like to clarify a little bit. We came back before you, staff did, after the CPUC approved the Flower Street project and the settlement agreement that implemented not only the Flower Street project, but also encouraged the city to do safety improvements all along their railroad crossings in the city. That occurred in March of last year. At that time, council directed staff to commence their environmental review for the project. Staff did so. Staff came back to you in May with the package for Flower Street. That went back, and the staff report went back and reviewed the negative declaration that occurred back in 1999 for the Flower Street project, which is when it was originally approved by the city and the CPUC. What happened is that there was unfortunately an expiration of the CPUC approval that required the city to go back and get another approval from the CPUC. So at that time in May, the staff came back with not only the design, the new design for the project, but also a CEQA review for you at that point. Reviewing the prior negative declaration, staff found that there were no additional issues that would trigger a new negative declaration. And in addition, the only real changes to the project were within the railroad right-of-way, which we are adding advanced safety signal system into Flower Street, and that is the major change between what was originally envisioned by the city and the current design. So there was a notice of exemption that was filed for that particular change, as well as a notice of determination. Those were filed back in April, and the time to, that would have been May. The time to challenge those has passed. And so happy to answer. I don't know whether I've answered your specific question.
Let me ask another question. So the original EIR was done in 1999?
It was actually a negative declaration with mitigation measures. So I would call it a mitigated negative declaration.
Okay, And so this new review took place recently, but it just focused on the negative deck from 1999.
What it did is it looked at the negative declaration, it looked at whether the project had changed significantly such that additional subsequent environmental review would be required. And the determination that the council made at that point in time in May was that no, it was not required. In addition, the only changes that were made to the design were within the railroad right-of-way and at the request of Metrolink and the CPUC were to improve flow. And that those particular items were exempt from CEQA review.
And then the other comment was exemption in rule number 10. Did you listen to the speaker when he talked about an exemption on
Sure.
rule number 10?
He was focused on the improvements within the railroad right-of-way. We looked at that exemption, and it does apply to this type of situation where you are looking at the additional components, the improvements, in essence, to the original design of the Flower Street crossing are within the right-of-way, and that exemption is covered, this exemption covers the new, in essence, bells and whistles that will go into the new and improved design for Flower Street.
And just to be clear, the original 1999 document, it envisioned opening Flower Street as a crossing, is that correct?
That is correct, it did. In the mitigated negative declaration, interestingly enough, the opening of Flower was to mitigate the traffic impacts from closing Beacons and Allen. So the city has actually already closed 2 at-grade railroad crossings and is adding Flower Street to mitigate the traffic impacts of closing those 2 crossings. And so what you're getting is you're closing old crossings and getting a very new, in essence, state-of-the-art crossing with many, many more safety features.
Mr. Starber.
And as part of the settlement with the CPUC, commitment of millions of dollars in safety improvements to Grandview, Sonora, and the crossing south of 134, with support by the council, on which you've already gone on record for the closure of Dorn, which among the entire stretch through Glendale is clearly a very unsafe crossing, for which the CPUC would like to see it closed, and we agree. So significant upgrades in safety along the entire corridor.
That is correct.
You, Mr. Yusefian?
I have a question from the person who's in charge of I have technical questions on that grade crossing.
You, Mr. Bagdanian.
Okay. Mr. Bagdanian, could you tell me what you're doing to this crossing? I hear that there was no change to the crossing except from 1999, according to the speaker earlier, except the few bells and whistles that is actually added to the track. My understanding was there was more than a few bells and whistles to the track itself. There was more as far as the number of gates, both sides, median. Could you explain that one to me? I want to make sure, if I'm going to vote for this, I want to make sure I'm voting for something that you guys promised me.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, this crossing, it will have the same number of lanes that we had originally planned as part of in 1999. There is some additional changes that we made. Essentially, originally we had 2 gates. These are the gates that close the crossing. We're going with quad gates. There will be 4 gates, so that eliminates cars trying to go around the gates. So that was discussed in our previous presentation, City Council, so those will still be there. The advanced preemption, which is a new system that is being implemented throughout as part of the sealed corridor that Metrolink has been spearheading, and we are the lead agency, so to speak, to implement the advanced preemption. That is also part of this. So it's really a signaling system. It's not something you can see, but it's the electrical conduits that are connecting, and there's software that will operate this advanced preemption. In addition to that, we have signals that will be installed at Airway, at Flower Street, and this upgrade of the signal at San Fernando and Flower Street is part of the original design, and it will still be the same. So essentially, the gating system, the advanced preemption, there's some minor changes in the alignment of the streets. We have improved the curb radiuses, and we have additional right-of-way that we're requiring from Metrolink so that we can develop a refuge area, and I have an exhibit here if you like to see it, just for vehicles to be able to coming out of the from Flower Street, making a right turn onto San Fernando Road. There's additional area for storage or queuing capacity for that purpose.
And there's
So
signals on San Fernando.
the signal on already, there is a new signal
San Fernando.
at San Fernando, at Flower Street will be a new signal. There will be a signal at Airway at Flower Street, which is an existing intersection. There's some changes there's an access to the water and power plant at that location that will be closed, so that eliminates any left turns. So everything that we had originally presented City Council pretty much stayed the same. It's just we upgraded the safety equipment with the latest state-of-the-art equipment that is available in the market.
But the signaling is designed in such fashion to make sure if you have a semi-truck and there's a train coming, it changes to allow that semi-truck to get out of the way so the train doesn't run into it.
That's correct. So there are
that's
safety
still there.
features, yes, safety features that we will clear the track way in advance of the arrival of the train, so we don't have the problems that have been experienced in the past with the similar railroad crossings.
Mr. Starbird.
And with all of that, I think if Mr. David Solo, Executive Director of Metrolink, were here, he would tell you that this crossing and the other crossings in Glendale will be models for the entire Metrolink broader Southern California area, which was why Metrolink, the railroad, and Caltrans all joined in the settlement agreement before the CPUC because they recognized the very high level of safety being built into this crossing and the other crossings.
And I just want to...
Mr. Mayor, if I can, and I want to repeat again, Ms. Truman said this, but recall back in the beginning, we closed 2 crossings in this same stretch in exchange for being able to open one. And now that one has also been made absolutely the most state-of-the-art safety that can be installed on a crossing today.
I just would like to say that at the Metrolink board meeting on Friday, this Glendale crossing was held up as the model for all the new crossings in Orange County, approximately $10 to $15 million worth of upgrades. I mean, they're pointing to Glendale, to our crossing with the quad gates, the advanced, they don't call them quad anymore, they call them now exit gates is the new term of art.
Terminology.
The advanced preemption, the medians as the state-of-the-art for the sealed corridor that Orange County is looking at it might as well have been that model that you have there, that they're investing millions of dollars in to copy our efforts. So it's a good crossing. It's a safe crossing. It's the state-of-the-art. It's the best that money can buy at this point.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, considerable money.
Mr. Draymond.
Well, I just want to add, just for the record, that all of this is very interesting, but it, of course, has nothing to do with the impact on the neighborhood in terms of things other than whether someone gets killed there. It doesn't have anything to do with the impact on the neighborhood, and I think that is probably one of the larger concerns of the residents in that Pelican area.
Mr. Starbird.
Mr. Mayor, and on that note, we can certainly have Jono review the improvements proposed to be installed at the entrance to the Pelican neighborhood, and they are also considerable. And we have noted throughout our discussions over the last several years before the CPUC and with the neighborhood that our interest is in, along with theirs, ensuring that they don't get what they fear, which is the cut-through traffic. I think both with respect to where the people are coming from and going to, and with respect to the improvements being installed, we see that is frankly a very small likelihood because that's not where people are coming or going to and from. And we've installed improvements that attempt to thwart that if it occurs, while also giving the residents some reasonable egress from the neighborhood, because frankly, there was a discussion about whether or not Pelanconey should be closed, which would certainly prevent any of that, but even the neighbors in Pelanconey didn't want to see access to that point eliminated entirely. So I think we have, over time, attempted to be very responsive to the current concerns of the neighborhood in the way this intersection has been designed, recognizing that we are significantly improving safety along the route as well as traffic flow, and trying to build in safeguards so we don't get the cut-through traffic that residents are fearful of.
Mr. Quintero.
I have a question for the traffic engineer. Going to the issue of cut-through traffic, looking at the plans here, it seems to me that you could leave the Disney area and then proceed and make a left turn at Alma or make a left turn at Kellogg in order to get up to Glen Oaks. Nothing is going to prevent that, right? You can't go into Pelanconey. You can't leave the project area and go straight to Pelanconey, but you can make a right turn and then a left either at Alma or a left at Kellogg to get you back up to Glen Oaks.
Councilmember Quintero, obviously yes, that is a possibility. The general direction of the traffic coming out of the GC3 area or Disney, majority of that traffic is coming from the freeway, and they will be headed toward the freeway. In other words, if they're going to go onto the 134, they will have two choices. Either they'll take the Flower Street to the west, which will then put them onto the bridge that we're building to get them onto the west to go to westbound on 134, or they can go over the bridge still to go to Concord if they want to continue down toward Concord on Fairmont. If they want to get to the 134 freeway, if they made a right turn from Flower Street, they can go down to actually Fairmont again, make a left turn to get onto the 134. So based on the modeling analysis we've done, we looked at the traffic patterns. We don't believe if somebody really wants to go to Glen Oaks, if they live in that area, obviously that would be the direction. They make a right turn, going to make a left turn on Kellogg because it's a signalized intersection. They will have access to Glen Oaks. If you went to Alma, you want to cross Glen Oaks, you won't be able to do that because there's a median there. So really, the main pattern potentially will be Kellogg, which is designed, it's a very wide street. It is not technically residential, it is a minor arterial. For that purpose, that traffic will be able to access Glen Oaks from Kellogg primarily. In our discussions, again, as recently I met Mr. Sheets, looking at Alma, some of those minor side streets are types of streets that we can do traffic calming. If there is an issue, we can make some turn restrictions if that becomes a problem. So there are some remedies, although we don't think that's going to get there, but there are some remedies that we can have in the future if the neighborhood desires to, implement them at that point.
Okay, so Mr. Yusefian.
But even if you didn't build this crossing, the potential of people using Alma or Kellogg still exists because Grandview is just a few hundred feet north, so people could just still drive down and make the same thing. They could do it today.
Or they can go just Grandview to Glen Oaks and make the right turn. So again, both of Kellogg and Grandview almost are about the same width in terms of the number of lanes.
To me, I'm more concerned about Pelanconey because it's a straight shot. You could just come out and just keep going straight. And is there any pork chops there? I mean, I see some design down in here. Maybe you could show them a bigger plan because this is very
includes
small.
a pork chop, so you can't cut straight across.
And in this $2 million, is all these improvements included in this?
Oh, no,
or is that separate?
The $2 million in motion in the fifth motion for the agency, that's the $2 million committed to the crossings to the south of 134.
Right.
This crossing and its improvements are far in excess of $2 million.
So
this is approaching how much in total cost, John?
The Flower Street, with the amount of funds we also have to give to Metrolink, we're about $5.3 million.
So all the improvements, what are the improvement costs to make sure that Pelanconey gets done and all that stuff? What is that cost?
Councilman Yusefian, I can't give you the specific item in terms of the total dollar amount, but what we have is a raised median on San Fernando Road that would prevent left turns into Pelanconi.
So there's no left turn?
There's no left turn southbound. The way the lane geometry is designed, it's going to force traffic on Flower to, it's a double right turn lane. There's two benefits. One, obviously, is not going to allow, if somebody wants to violate it and go around the island and violate to go there, there's a possibility, but with the median island that we have designed with the signal phasic indication, that would be a total violation if they did that. So this traffic coming out of Flower Street would be forced to make a right turn. That's a change that was made during the design and the discussions with PUC. It actually helps us from the signal phasing. It makes it safer because there's one less movement that we have to deal with during the preemption phase when a train arrives. So that made an improvement here. We have a very small island here because of the width of Pelanconi. We can't put any larger island there in order to allow right turn from northbound San Fernando Road and an exit right turn out of Pelanconi to go northbound onto San Fernando Road. So there is a small island that will be designed, which will essentially prevent left turns out, but it will also help out just for traffic maybe not going into that direction.
Okay. Back again, my question is, in this item that's in front of us,
Yes.
is any of the funding for all those neighborhood protection plan included in here?
Outside of what you see on this plan, the island, the median islands, and all the bells and whistles, what we call it, that's all that's included in the 5.3. There is no additional, say, traffic calming measures or anything in that fund estimate that we have provided to City Council.
I understand the 5.3. What I'm trying to get, in here, I have a $2 million.
Oh, I'm sorry. If I address...
200 and some odd $1,000 or so. What I want to know, do you have the money for the whole $5.5 million? So all those things have been funded.
Yeah, the 5.3 includes all the improvements you see here, the gates, the preemption system. The only thing right now we don't have, and we provided an estimate in the staff report, is there are some utility lines that we were dealing with at the crossings that we were currently potholing and working on that, which will be, as soon as we identify those lines, we'll be coming back with the council. Our estimate is about $350,000, either to protect the utility lines or relocate them. That's the only item which is outstanding right now. Otherwise, everything that you see it's in the plan we've discussed is included in that 5.3.
And it's pleasure. Let me point out, the action before you is to approve the plans and specifications and essentially go out to bid for all of this work. You previously authorized through the CPUC settlement are beginning to the design on this. You approved the sequel on this. The design is completed. You now have before you the plans and specifications to go out to bid and adjustment of contingencies for the consultant work to support that, and the $2 million, which is part of the CPUC settlement for the improvements south of the 134, not involving this at all. So the short answer is yes, all the money is here, you've approved it.
So
you
we have the
authorized it to do design.
$5.5 million.
Yes.
The $2 million is for something else.
Yes. The $2 million is for something else, which is
not-
south 134.
Okay, so it does not affect this.
No.
Okay, so somebody explain to me, the city attorney, if it's, this is, the $2 million is not part of this at-grade crossing, if it's rejected, would it kill the at-grade crossing?
Well, let me tell you how it will. It is a condition in the settlement with the CPUC.
It's the condition of the condition.
So their approval of Flower was conditioned on I'll call it a master settlement of a number of issues, which included the opening of Flower, but with the very high level of safety improvements that Janos just reviewed, the upgrade and improvement of Grandview, the upgrade and improvement of Sonora, and then a commitment to place into escrow for the use by Metrolink, who will coordinate the improvements of the crossings south of the 134. That's the $2 million, is that money appropriated. Now, those were all conditions of the one large settlement for which the CPUC then approved the Flower Street opening. So if any one of those pieces falls off, I think it brings the whole question of the CPUC settlement into question.
Where did this money come from? Did this come from redevelopment money, or? Our general fund, where'd it come?
Yes, the funds are outlined under the fiscal impact of the staff report. They have the account numbers and the sources of funding have been identified, and Director of Redevelopment Agency staff, Phil Lanzafame, is here if you want any specifics as to the individual.
I'm just curious,
But
we're spending...
Yes, that funding was identified with the account numbers where they're available currently.
Well, let's be clear, it is not all redevelopment agency money.
He's not
There's-
asking
there's-
for this, I guess you're asking for the 5.5, right?
Just in general, the money the overall money that's being spent came from where? It came from the city's,
It's actually a number of different sources. It's the city's general CIP, it's the redevelopment agency, it's state, I don't know the, yeah, that's right, some of the county commitment to the redevelopment project area from tax increment being generated from the Disney
that's what
project.
I'd like.
commitment
If
of
there's
that.
some percentage, I'm just curious as to what came out of the city's.
Do you recall, Phil?
I don't have a calculator, but under the funding source on page, I don't have pages on here, under the fiscal impact where it says funding source, those funds that are listed under funding 246, those are from the county. That was a commitment by the county to pass back to us a portion of their pass-throughs. I don't want to...
That came from Disney.
Sorry?
That came from Disney.
It actually came from the generation of that project.
Improvements on Disney.
Right. And it, under our 1992 pass-through agreements, we passed it to the county. They're giving it back to us for specific improvements, these being one of those listed.
So it's the 3.3 million?
2.7 and 200,000, so it's about $3 million.
Okay.
Well, I wish we could vote on this today. I mean, we talk about creating jobs and improving clean growth in Glendale, and that's what we got with our Disney projects and our ABC 7 and our DreamWorks. And creating jobs means bringing people into the area, and 2 of those railroad crossings have been closed. That means that there's additional pressure and strain on the existing crossings, and it is a matter of safety to open up an additional crossing, this Flower Street crossing, which is going to be, as we talked about, state-of-the-art. And that's what it's about. It's certainly about protecting the neighborhoods as best as we can. I think we've taken steps. And as Mr. Sheets said, by no means is the line of communication closed. It's something that I think we're committed to do, to discuss with them and see how this will work. And this is several years down the road, looking at traffic patterns. And we have, I think the city council as a whole has been very responsive to neighborhood complaints and issues of cut-through traffic, a la our speed humps and speed bumps and all that, as well as the barriers, et cetera. But I do think it's important that we move forward on this. It's a safety issue. It's a commitment to growth of clean industry and development that I'm very proud of in that GC3 campus. But if it's not going to go, I think we should look for a continuance until we have a full contingency. Mr. Yusefi.
I'll tell you where I stand on this, and I can just be coy and hide a little bit. But I'll tell you right off the bat, I did not participate on any of the closed session issues when this was going to the CPUC and dealing with this. Originally, this was something just at Great Crossing. Now, before the railroad accident, I would have supported it. I supported it, as a matter of fact, until the railroad accident. It's funny how things change, and when you see bodies all over the place. And as I talked to Disney, I told them I just have an issue dealing with my own conscience at night, knowing that I went ahead and approved another at-grade crossing, just like there was in Chevy Chase. I just couldn't do it. So consequently, I did not participate in any of the closed session meetings, because at one point I was thinking actually going to CPUC and saying, deny this. Now, to the credit of the city I must say the staff went out and worked diligently to figure out alternatives. Because as far as I was concerned, there's another option. The option is you don't do at-grade crossing, you do an underpass or an overpass. That's the way to do it. That's the way they should do it in the whole state of California. But they are not doing that because it costs $6 billion. But if you think about it, $6 billion is not a lot for the whole state when you really need to move freight very quickly and as fast as you can. But it didn't happen. At one point, I think, to the credit of the city manager and also Jono, they could have just kind of said, that's it, too bad, Bob's just one vote, and we got 4. Hell with it. Get it approved. That's not what they did. They went out there, they got somebody, I don't know where they found him from, who came with this signal preemption program and so on and so forth.
Texas.
Well, not only Texas, they also had actually one location in Los Angeles that actually works. They brought a videotape of it, they showed it to us. I went to the site, I looked at it, and it looked like it's something that works. So, considering the fact that I'm not going to get what I want, which is not an at-grade crossing, have an underpass, and overpass will be other option. So the only other thing I said is, if you are able to go out there and you're about to eliminate a lot of the risk throughout the city of Glendale, you can't eliminate the risk everywhere. At least I can control Glendale. So if you can control that part, I will vote for it. And the city has gone out there. I think they're going to spend between $7 to $11 million to do all of our at-grade crossings that way. That's a lot of money putting out there toward the safety. And I'm a man of my own words. I'm not going to tell the city, go out there, spend $11 million to improve safety on the railroad, and then turn around and say, gee, now it looks like I may not have the vote, so I'll just flip-flop. I'm not going to do that. So I will vote for this if it ever comes back. As I said, I'm not totally happy camper, but then again, I never get everything I want. Never did when I was a little kid. I'll never do until I'm buried. But you always make a compromise, and you make a good compromise. Try not to put the safety of people at risk. And I think this one basically does what the staff told me. That's why I asked for it. So that's what I would do, somewhere down the line, whether it's today or somewhere later, 6 months later or whatever.
Would you make a motion then, Mr.
Yes.
Yusefi, to continue this till next?
You would like to continue this?
I believe in all prudence we should continue.
Okay. I'll make a motion.
I'm not going to foreclose debate, but if you have a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue this item to next week.
Second.
Mr. Drain.
No, I will save my debate for that time. There's no point today. I was just going to say that if you were asking for consensus, I just wanted to restate that I had not changed on my position.
Let's take roll call, please.
There'll be a motion to continue the matter till April 8th at 2:30 for another joint public meeting of the City Council Redevelopment Agency without further public notice.
That was my motion.
So this covers 1 through 1E.
1A through E. Actually, this continuance is it's a council motion, a 1A through D.
The separate action on agency.
So for council 1A through D, roll call, please.
Council members Draymond.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Make a motion for the agency on 1E, the same thing.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. City Clerk?
Who was the second? Okay, thank you.
Quintero.
Agency members Najarian.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver. Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Draymond.
Yes.
And I believe that's the last. Is there a motion to adjourn
Motion
for
to
council?
adjourn for council.
Second.
Council's adjourned.
Motion to adjourn for agency.
Second.
We are adjourned.